From Perth, Australia, and broadcasting around the world, you're listening to The O Show with your host, Oren McCory. The O Show is a no-nonsense podcast bringing you the best advice on training, mindset, and nutrition to supercharge your efforts in the gym, the kitchen, and most importantly, in your head. Don't forget to share this episode on your social media. Now, let's get to it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to today's episode of The O Show. I'm your host, Oren McCory, and I'm here with a guest who has only been on 4 episodes ago, but he was so good last time, I thought we need to get him back on to explain something else. He is the CEO of Primabolics Nutrition, Mr. Will Warren Davey. Will, how are you, man?
Mate, I'm loving the opportunity to come back. Again, as we said just off air before, I'm so close to our last debut, but we've just been talking back and forth off air and in between the episodes really since around Christmas time, haven't we? And just playing with ideas. And yeah, I'm really glad that we could connect again, mate, on this platform and so hopefully share some of that, what we were talking about with your clients, with listeners.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And just to give everyone a little update, when we were on last time, we talked about Grind being Joe Menzel's favorite non-stim pre-workout. I've tried it. It's fucking good. I've also got the Restore, which is the adrenal health, sleep sort of relaxation sort of product, and it's been very good as well. So just to update people, because sometimes we talk about things like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go try that, and people wonder, did he actually do that? Was he just saying that? I actually went and fucking ordered it, and I actually enjoyed the stuff. So yeah, good work on those. I'm enjoying those.
Would have been awkward if that didn't work out, right? You'd be like, so why was that pre-workout terrible, Will?
Yeah, worst pump of my life, It was tragic. After it, mate.
Restore kept me awake. No. I'm stoked it worked out for you, man. I really am. Restore is one of those things that I think because so many people, just like we're going to talk today a little bit in the hormonal space, I think stress and what it does to your hormones, and in particular around sleep and your circadian rhythm, is so overlooked, but also so applicable to everyone that things like when I started making adrenal products as a sleep aid, I didn't realize just how many people that would be applicable for, and just how many people from all walks of life are experiencing that. And that's sort of a bit of a thing. What we were talking about as well before is hormonal issues are so common now that it's really worth us getting on here and having a chat about it and trying to spread some information,
Yeah, 100%. And this all started from, like, we're just talking about, the products you've got, how they can benefit people. And you just brought one out called Estro, which has now sold out. So this is not just a deliberate plug for the product, because you can't get it as of yet. I don't know if they can pre-order it, but like, it's genuinely not a plug. We're coming on here to talk about how products like that can affect women and help with issues that women may not even realize that they're going through, or that it's an issue, right? Because estrogen is this hormone that it's needed in the female body. It's needed in the male body too, obviously. But it's a hormone that women just accept that they've got, and they don't realize that it can cause fat gain in certain spots. It might affect certain results, different side effects from, like birth control pills and suppression of estrogen or progesterone. So there's so much that women need to really consider, but I guess it doesn't get talked about. It's like the sleep thing. It's like so many people just put a Band-Aid on it and don't realize that they're actually doing more damage. So let's talk about, I want to pretend that I know nothing. I'm a rank beginner. Like, imagine I'm like the average listener of the podcast who knows what estrogen is, but doesn't know the ins and outs of it. So let's talk about what it is first, Will. What is estrogen? What's its role in the body? And why do women have it?
Yeah, sure. So I guess both guys and girls have got it, and it's a wonderful hormone. Like it's a very proliferative hormone. It grows things. Okay, so as it has a lot of roles in everything from joint health through to bone density health as well, and bone formation. It has neuroprotective qualities as well, so it's really, really good for long term for cognitive health and basically cognition and neural, basically how your neurochemistry works, as well as your physiological functions such as reproduction. It's obviously crucial for, And it as a hormone, basically its job is to build things. It either builds a menstrual cycle, builds fertility, builds fat, fluid, things that our body uses to create life, really, in its usual application. In men, also has very important features, very, very integral in, again, more so in the ratio of how it exists to testosterone and other androgens, but it's also very, very useful in men for, again, things like your joint health. And anyone who's been in any sort of competitive space where they've played around with estrogen in the male competing has learned very quickly that their joints dry out quite fast. Things like synovial fluid, which is basically the lubricant for a lot of our joints, is linked to estrogen. So, joint health, bone formation. Ironically, it's also the thing that dictates how tall we grow as well. So it's very linked to overall growth. It's a very proliferative hormone because it's there to grow. So has all these, but just like in both genders, being the primary sex hormone for women, obviously, it does decline with time, and most systems are linked to it being optimal to function optimally. So for optimal estrogen levels, and I say optimal, not high, because it's not about, like, men tend to think of testosterone and go, I want as high as possible for it to be good. But in the body, it's typically more so about ratios. Your ratio of your different estrogens, and there are 3 of them, in relation to your progesterone, in relation to your other androgens, is very, very crucial for things like how regular your menstrual cycle will be, your fertility, health, well-being, cognitive function, mood, motivation, libido. All these things are all tied to it. So I guess where we come in today is sort of showing, of course, when you're looking into the fitness space, and we're trying to better ourselves, better our body composition, just be healthier and fitter and stronger. I guess I tend to look at it top down first. And I tend to think, if any of these systems are out of whack, if any of these primary hormones are not optimal, or the ratios are wrong, or what have you, it makes everything downstream of that a much harder job. So I guess as a broad overview to answer the question, that's sort of a bit of a snapshot on what it does in our bodies. Having it at an optimal level is linked to long-term, like things like having optimal estrogen levels are very, very protective against things like Alzheimer's, MS, other degenerative neural diseases. So it's a really important, and also osteoporosis, early onset osteopenia, all these sort of things are all prevented with adequate primary sex hormone levels. So it naturally declines with time, but also due to a lot of environmental factors, it tends to get out of whack, which is what I wanted to chat with today. It's a really, really focus on what if it doesn't work, how it should,
Yeah. Okay. So I think the listeners can tell that it's crucial in the body, multiple reasons, like ranging from small little things to quite big things. So like you said, when it gets out of whack, it needs to be in this little optimal range. It's never going to be like, there's not one number it should always be. It's probably within a range, but there's also then low and there's high. And there's obviously, like you're suggesting, risk factors of it being both. So I'll let you pick which one, low or high. Which is more risky, do you think, to females? And what's the sort of side effects that might come, or how might everything downstream from there not function right?
Yeah, of course. So I guess the easiest way to look in guys, it's very obvious aesthetically. In women though, probably let's pick estrogen dominance, because I guess in a perfect world, our bodies would balance themselves. The idea is that our bodies have a beautifully complex system for balancing our hormones to keep them in check. But unfortunately, with the environmental burdens like pollutants, cosmetics, plastics, contraceptive pills, having on top of that soys, all of these environmental burdens that tend to drive up estrogen, cortisol, stress. There's a lot of environmental factors now that are estrifying, that they tend to, they promote estrogen in the body, or they promote estrogenic activity. So I would normally go low estrogen first, but what I'm seeing more and more commonly is estrogen dominance in women. And we're seeing it lead to, you can see it very clearly. I guess we'll touch on the physical symptoms first. So looking at, your average client that might come to you saying, hey, I'd like to lose some weight. Quite typically, the areas they're going to say first are probably lower stomach, lower back, like love handles, glutes, hamstrings, so basically, around hip, butt, and thighs. These are sort of the pretty common trouble areas, right? Like a lot of people come to you and say, like I'd love to lose my stomach, I'd love to have abs, or I'd love just to not have love handles. And these are really common areas. Now, so when you look at common sort of, aesthetically obvious signs of being estrogen dominant, these areas typically are very stubborn. So these areas, you might be dieting, you might be training hard, you might be in a calorie deficit, and still finding these areas are the last places to move or respond. That's a very, very common symptom of being estrogen dominant. Now, the reason behind this is that hormones are made from fats, sorry. So they're all sourced from cholesterol as the parent hormone, and it goes down from cholesterol to pregnenolone, DHEA, and then it goes down to other hormones from that cascade. So they're all made from fats, right? And as I mentioned, there's some environmental burdens now, like stress, such widespread use of contraceptives, soys, BPAs, plastics, all these sort of things tend to drive up estrogen in the body. The way that our body tends to try and balance this is to detoxify it, is to strip it out, pull it through our detoxification system. Being fat-based, what happens is it'll try and break it down through phase 2 detoxification, put it into your body, and your body's meant to flush it out. Life's good. You're back to balance. Everything's cool. Your body keeps it in check. Unfortunately, with these burdens, it means that usually our detoxification systems are burdened too, and they're dealing with a lot of other stuff, a lot of, inbound insults as well. They think that the average female now is exposed to something like 200 plus chemicals in a day, ranging from her cosmetics through to hair care, through to body, personal hygiene products, through to just pollution, through to carbon monoxide, like all these different chemicals. So if we think that our body's detox pathway is responsible for balancing our hormones, our detox pathways are heavily burdened, and our body's just pulled out all of this fat-soluble hormone and dumped it into our bloodstream. And our bloodstream's gone, we can't have huge amounts of hormones circulating. This is well out of whack. We need to store this somewhere. Being made from a fat, it's going to put it straight into fatty tissue. So typical areas, lower stomach, lower back, hip, butt, thighs, in a big belt around our midsection, basically. And it stays there because it becomes non-responsive, basically. It doesn't act, it's not very metabolically active. And it tends to have signaling messengers called adipokines that send signals saying, leave us alone, we're all good here, this is, we're cool. And then estrogen, being a building hormone, builds more fat around it as well. And the problem goes on. And we wonder why we're dieting and nothing's shifting, and that area is staying very stubborn. So looping that all through, very common symptom of estrogen dominance is these estrogenic body, deposits of body fat that we see around that are very stubborn and resistant to exercise. Now, downstream of those, or more internally, what you'll see, if you have got higher estrogen as well, is it tends to slow down your thyroid function, because estrogen has a much less powerful effect than testosterone does on your thyroid hormones. So T4, your body's primary thyroid hormone, it interacts very positively when there's high androgens present. It tends to convert faster to T3, converts better. You end up with a higher basal metabolic rate. Once estrogen goes up, and it tends to drive down your metabolic rate quite fast, because essentially that it's just a bit less favorable how they interact, estrogen and versus testosterone with your thyroid. So you've got these stubborn fatty areas. You've got this really hard to move weight. You've got to slow down metabolism as well. So even if it was just calories in, calories out game and then weighed it out, now your calories out model, your basal metabolic rate, is also slower. So you've got stubborn fat and a slow metabolism. Now that, and you're seeing it, it becomes a really vicious little cycle. Next thing is mood and irritability. So we might see common elevated cortisol symptoms, such as, mood swings, irritability, like ease to be irritable. So if you're very irritability, foggy headedness is a very common one. Lacking motivation is another one as well. So lacking drive, lacking motivation. Again, libido will get played with because when our hormones are out of whack. Struggling to switch off as well. If they find they're constantly running on gut instinct and this constant feeling of just worry, being in that real maternal instinct sort of vibe, but all the time. These are also really, really common. And not sleeping well. So if they're not switching off well at night, waking up several times throughout the night as well, these are all very common signs that your body's in stress and typically has, a hormonal imbalance behind it. So, slower metabolism, stubborn body fat, issues switching off, higher than usual levels of stress, and of course your menstrual cycle will be way out of whack as well. So you might find with higher estrogen, typically it will be a very heavy period often. It can be one that, because estrogen builds, that's the first half of the cycle. It builds the period. So if you have high estrogen, it just keeps building and you end up with a really huge, you end up with it's quite a significant cycle. And that can lead to all your PMS symptoms that you'll hear about, such as cramping, pressure headaches as well from having high estrogen. Basically, just all your PMS symptoms get significantly elevated. So PMS, slow metabolism, stubborn body fat, high stress, they're all signs that your estrogen is probably, on the higher side that it needs to be.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of females will be, unknowingly altering their estrogen levels by taking their pill, right? Because it's so common nowadays that from the age you start having sex, I don't know, for a chick, 14, I don't know what nowadays, yeah. Early teens, girls are going to be interested in having sex, and depending on how the doctor that they go to, the doctor might put them on as young as 13, maybe slightly older, but maybe even younger than that. I don't really know. But basically by the time they get to 30, they've been on this pill and they're trying for their first kid, say at age 30. They've been on a pill for 15 years of their life. And then they wonder why everything's all out of whack and why it might be harder for something like having a baby, because their hormones are so out of whack from this abuse of a drug over the years, even though it seemed deemed fine because that's what their doctor puts them on, right?
Oh, it's crazy, mate. And it's even younger. And it's not just sexual activity wise. It's also, if they come in with bad skin, acne, super common. They'll say, "Oh, put this on; it'll balance out your hormones." It doesn't balance out your hormones. It's essentially it's exactly the same as a male being on cycle. Yeah, it's exogenous hormone. It literally is. So it's I guess there's a lot of stigma in our industry about steroids and about men using performance enhancing drugs and so on. That's just a testosterone derivative. That's nothing exciting. The pill is exactly that. It's an exogenous hormone as well. It's essentially putting girls on a steroid cycle, but leaving them on it for 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. Guys get freaked out when it's over, it's 14 weeks. So, I really like to stress the importance. You're really playing with your biology. It's not a real period when you're on your pill. It's a withdrawal symptom when you go to those 7 days of sugar pills at the end of the 14 days of exogenous hormone. And I struggle to see many cases where people bounce back and felt the same afterwards. It's being on an exogenous hormone, a synthetic version of a hormone for months, if not years, if not decades at a time. Stopping that out of nowhere after our natural systems were shut down for so long and expecting them to restart and produce adequate hormone and be in balance. And obviously a lot of those things that happen then are things like you might have imbalances in the ratios whilst you're waiting for your luteal cycles to start and so on. You might have higher progesterone or higher androgens, say, than your estrogen at the start. So you might find that your acne comes back out of nowhere. And you'll be like, oh, why have I got cystic acne right now? It's because your DHT is high, because your androgens are higher. So what I would say in regards to the pill is that it's very, very common, but it's not normal for our physiology to be on autopilot, for such long periods of time. So when we're dealing with female clients who are on contraceptives, I'm making general statements because there's so many varieties and they all do slightly different things. And then there's marinas and rods and they all have different ways as well of interacting. But as a whole, we're altering our body's chemistry and we need to, deal that with some respect with regards to making the choice in the first place. It's a very significant thing you're deciding to do in terms of what you're doing to your chemistry,
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And I think the listeners can now see that it not only affects so much, but it's it should be quite tightly controlled. You should be monitoring the side effects. Most people should be tracking their cycle of some sorts, whether they're on it or not. But in terms of, so let's talk about you as a supplement company coming in and wanting to make a product that can help people. How does one go about, we spoke last time about how you developed these initial products and how you built the brand to where you are now. But one, what made you decide to do it? And then how do you decide what goes in to try to help somebody deal with the potential side effects of estrogen dominance like this?
Man, it's very much like yourself. Once you've been around a while, you start learning, you start seeing bigger picture stuff, and you start realizing trends amongst clients. And I started picking out a few key trends. And I started like formulating when I was just a young diehard bodybuilder in his early 20s, who was just all about getting massive, didn't care. And back then it was, all of the food was weighed and tracked and everything anyway. So I guess my look of people's body composition was just, put them on a meal plan, just put them in a calorie deficit, cool. I started seeing more and more that a lot of people were having very significant issues with achieving their body composition long term, or a lot of people would come out of bodybuilding comps where I'd be, doing prep alongside them, and you'd see they just weren't the same. They didn't bounce back, right? So it immediately piqued my interest in this sort of space, seeing that how much of an impact it can have. We've all got friends who, particularly in bikini and in sports and figure, they compete, they reverse diet out, or they don't reverse diet out. So we look at them 3 months later, and they've put on they're at 25% body fat, holding water like crazy. They can't get their weight under control. Their hunger signals are all completely out of whack as well. And the metabolism is just all screwed up from harsh dieting and so on. Those sort of things made me really look very closely at what's going on, I guess. And so as I saw this as a trend emerge, I started shifting my brand as a whole more towards what will actually meaningfully help someone in that situation. If someone's coming to me and saying, I want to lose weight, look at why you haven't already. And you look at what's happening in your life, what's it look like, how are your stresses, how's your sleep, how's your, what have you been doing hormonally? Have you just had it, particularly mums as well, that they've had huge hormonal fluctuations. So we look at that first. So when I was making things like estro, it just fell in logically. I guess I've always looked at things very much like a naturopath, I suppose, how the systems interact and what things impact most people and what's most likely to be a big lever we can pull. And sure enough, when it came to female body composition, and indeed guys too, because I was, as we say, an endomorphic body type, I'm very estrogenic as well. And it's great because estrogen grows everything, including muscle. Very, very important for growing muscle mass as well. So you'll see, we've all seen endomorphs as those big burly dudes that, big barrel chested sort of shape. They grow muscle really easily, but they also grow fat really easily. That's a sign of, that's a very estrogenic sort of, common estrogenic situation, right? So I myself also have experienced what it's like to have high estrogen as a male, and it's so when I made this product, it was more so out of my own interest initially. So when I made it, what I had to do was look at how does it achieve balance itself? Because it's sort of just like in the pill situation, you'll never really, when you put an exogenous source in, you'll always throw something out of whack. You sort of can't, just try and come in and override something. It doesn't work. Your body's meant to work in its own little feedback loop. You just got to correct the loop. Because once you've got, like we spoke before, when you've got high estrogen in the first place, say, let's say it's because your detoxification system is not working, whatever. You've also got high stresses. That the high estrogen causes high stresses, say, because we've got mood fluctuations, irritability, anxiety, gut instinct, these sort of feelings. High cortisol is also associated with higher estrogen. So you start doing this little feedback loop. The estrogen causes the anxiety, which causes the cortisol, which causes the estrogen. And you start this little feedback loop. You get higher and you get more and more estrogen build up. The stress burdens the detoxification system. That slows down. More and more estrogen builds up. More mood, more anxiety, more cortisol, more and more. It becomes this big problem, right? And we see that now in even teenagers. You'll see 16-year-old girls walking around with significant breast development, and it doesn't make any sense. You look at it, you're like, wow, that wasn't around even 10 years ago. And it's true, because the environmental burdens, the amount of chemicals, the amount of things we're confronted with, the amount of stress we see now is so much higher than before. Our body's not dealing with it. So when I was looking at how to fix that, how do you break that loop? The crux was getting that detoxification pathway working. So when I'm making a formula to fix it, what you do is you help your body do it itself, because it will do it itself, but you have to help it break the cycle. So what you do is you throw in, and a lot of your naturopathic herbs are really cool for it, like Vitex, Dim. But these herbs, what all they do is they plug in key nutrients, botanicals. You plug them in to different parts of your detox pathways to sort of pull levers to drive it faster or slower, and that helps your body do its own job of balancing the hormone. So your phase, you got phase 1 and phase 2. Your phase 2 detoxification is designed to, sulfate, methylate, conjugate, glucuronidate hormone, pull it out, flush it. That's how it's meant to work. Unless all that other stuff's happening, right? So you put in things to help ease the environmental burdens, put in things to drive that detoxification, starts stripping out hormone, starts bringing things back into equilibrium. That's the real way to get things sorted out, is let your body do it, and then it'll just self-perpetuate that loop. Because once they're in balance, that loop will just continue itself. You'll return to regular function if you can put in a little miniature campaign, 2-3 months of really trying to correct it, and then it'll go back into it'll do itself basically after that. So when I made Estro, that's what it was. I'm like, how can I stop the loop? How can I balance things out? And then how can I get that hormone out of the system faster? Even though I know they're probably stressed and they've probably got quite out of whack hormones. They're probably on the pill, because they pretty much 90% of females are. So I had to use botanicals that also didn't interact with the pill as well. Yeah. So it was very hard to do. Actually, it was more complicated than trying to make the primal test, for example, with guys. Our hormones are pretty straightforward. But yeah, with females, it's very challenging because you have to have everything in a very delicate, balance, really. So
yeah. So I think it's quite clear that there's so much going on that can impact estrogen. One thing that stood out, you were talking about how 10 years ago, the stuff like 16-year-olds or younger with significant breast development, like some people might hear that and think, oh, so I just need more estrogen and my boobs will grow. But like, remember that breast tissue is fat. So the downside is you're going to add fat all over. It just happens that these young girls have that development in their boobs, and it might go when we start to detox or lose weight, as is common with when women start to diet. They're like, oh, my boobs are shrinking, and just because it's fat tissue. So ladies, if you heard that comment, don't think that, oh, this is a positive of estrogen, I'll just get my boobs to grow if I just don't address this estrogen issue. It probably still needs to be addressed and get it into your normal range rather than suffer with high and have the other side effects. But what stood out there, mate, is that you've clearly put a lot of thought into this. It's a product that works alongside the pill, rather than something that you just throw out something that might be really effective but actually negates the issue of the pill being effective. And then so they get all these, they feel great, they're losing body fat, but then all of a sudden they're pregnant because it's stopped the pill from doing its job. So there's a lot that's went into that. But one thing we haven't touched on really is guys, and I know that you've done a video on your I think it was on your Instagram story about how estro is used with guys, and how natural versus assisted is very different, obviously, but how natural guys especially can benefit from using a product like this. So let's talk about the guys quickly, because obviously we're not as complex as women. We don't need the drive for estrogen to be high for like childbirth and things. But why would a guy want to use a product like estro, and what's the sort of scenario what can they see as a potential benefit from using a product and actually trying to get their estrogen under control?
Yeah, it's funny actually. Most of my customers when I first reached out were guys, and particularly guys on cycle, actually, funny enough, asking about it, because I think being on cycle tends to, people forget you have to basically be pretty good on your biochemistry to manage your cycle if you do it properly, right? Like a lot of people do it wrong, but if you want to do it right, to manage, you're managing your estrogen, you're managing your androgens, you're managing side effects of both. You're playing a pretty complex, role. Like normally you go to an endocrinologist for that, right? Who's had a bit of education around it. This is just guys who have gone to gym for a few years. So I guess a lot of it were guys who weren't sure about how is the best way to actually get their manage their estrogen. But in particular, look, I think people like myself, right? Massive weight loss background. I was 96 kilos at 12 years old. Like, I was a very big kid and continued to be right through teenage years. And having that body fat combined with my body type, body fat in itself is proliferative of estrogen. The worse your body composition, the higher your body fat versus muscle mass. Typically, the lower your androgen ratio for men. So that for men, that's your ratio of testosterone to estrogen is your androgen ratio. Now, you can have pretty average, non-spectacular test, but if your estrogen is really high, that ratio is terrible. Now, you can also have that same average, nothing special test level, but if you've got lower estrogen, you can actually feel like a superhero. You know, you can have all that. You know, you can have the effect. You can look and feel like you've had high test. It's the ratios that are almost more important than the numbers, right? So now, where men should really look at estrogen, though, one, we have the same environmental factors as girls that are driving up estrogen. Those BPAs, those plastics, soys, a lot of the pollutants, a lot of chemicals that we use, a lot of things drive up estrogen. Stress is so big, and men are the last ones to talk about it. But stress smashes testosterone. If you look at all the clinical papers on circulating cortisol and testosterone, you'll see straight away cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. So that androgen ratio we spoke about is instantly worse off. You've got lower test and you've got higher, and you've got relative to your estrogen. So straight away you're on the back foot. So assuming that stress is a pretty safe assumption in a lot of people's lives. We live very busy lifestyles, and it's not just mental stress; it's also overtraining, undertraining, not eating, like under eating is a really common one. Alcohol consumption, and look, alcohol for the girls listening too. I know that a lot of female athletes, it's part of our lifestyles. We have social lives that involve alcohol. That's a really big contributor to estrogen. It is alcohol. Okay, so it smashes our testosterone down as well in men. So also in guys, alcohol, really, really big killer for it. Also nutrient deficiencies, actual mental stress, jobs, families, the works. So stress is super common, and I see that impacting testosterone quite negatively. So by default, your ratios are suboptimal. So as a guy, what does that mean? Holding the stubborn body fat we talk about with the girls, all the same symptoms. Estrogen dominance in men is very much the same. Indecisiveness, struggling to make decisions, lacking mood, lacking motivation, self-doubt, running on gut instinct, feeling like you're, being in flight or fight more often than not, as well as holding body fat around the lower stomach, love handles, lower chest as well, back of arms. These sort of areas are all common, and they're very stubborn too, particularly lower chest and lower stomach, very stubborn with guys. If you come from a weight loss background like me, having high body fat usually correlates to high estrogen as well. And being fat-based, you pretty much can't get rid of it until you lose that body fat that is the hormonally responsive side. Or at least before we had subs to help. So in men, there's a few different ways. If you're very stressed, you should be looking at your estrogen. Second part, if you've ever played with any PEDs in the past, anyone who's done cycles previously, I would look at it. If you've yo-yo dieted or crash dieted hard, I would look at it because your testosterone drops during hard dieting periods too. And then finally, anyone who's had historically lower testosterone as well, quite often it's because high estrogen is linked to high SHBG, so sex hormone binding globulin, and that binds up our free testosterone as well. So if you've got basically if you have higher estrogen, it will bind up your free test and also drive down your overall effective testosterone in your system. So if you're looking at trying to build muscle, burn fat, estrogen is the last thing you want floating around as a guy.
Yeah.
It gets very easily built up by environmental factors, stresses, and also just having having testosterone being not optimal in the first place. And you see it a lot. You'll see young kids with man boobs walking around teenage gyno is very common. With heavy set guys, you'll see pretty much breast development, in guys that are very overweight as well. And it's true, they call it man boobs, but it literally is, it's breast, minus, so it affects guys just as much. So when I'm looking at guys that are trying to get in better shape, trying to lose their stomach, lose the spare tire, a lot of the time those areas are influenced by cortisol and by estrogen. So again, when I made estro, I put it in there to sort of help that. And I guess the best way to do it, like I said, is to break the cycle, right? So high stress causes low test, does this loop. So you break it. So you throw in something like Vitex, right? Now, Vitex is a very strong dopamine agonist. So we spoke about low mood, we spoke about low motivation, and this is for guys and girls. So in both sexes, if you throw prolactin in, if you throw, Vitex in, it will drop prolactin and boost dopamine. So dopamine is our reward hormone. It's so great. It's a neurotransmitter giving us, focus and pride and positive mood and just feelings of achievement and I got it. Like chasing a dopamine hit, you get dopamine hits from exercise, from sex, from all the great things. This is where dopamine comes from, right? Now you get Vitex boosts that a lot. But that herb that I threw in there also helps to break that cycle in both guys and girls. Because what it does, it basically, whilst prolactin is high, and prolactin raises in the same ways that stress does, but when prolactin's high, it blocks that signal from its testes saying produce more testosterone. So it's, if anyone's heard of luteinizing hormone, it blocks luteinizing hormone from working. So for guys, that's super, super bad. And in girls in particular, prolactin gets high when you're overtraining. So if you see any girls who've been doing any harsh dieting, the cardio bunnies in particular, they might be on 1,200 calories doing 2 hours of cardio a day. They might, their energy demand is huge, but their calorie intake's tiny. We see that all the time. Girls who are eating absolutely nothing, they're on 1,200, 1,300 calories, they're doing 2 hours of exercise a day. That overtraining, that stress will be driving up prolactin. Prolactin tends to make estrogenic side effects higher, and it also blunts the signaling to make more testosterone and androgens. So in guys, it's crucial. If you want nice, healthy testosterone signaling, nice, healthy testosterone production, blunt that prolactin. Throw in Vitex. I've got that in estro as the main ingredient, and it helps to fix the mood issues for one, because it's really, really good for dopamine. But two, it helps to kickstart that cycle again, because you drop the prolactin and straight away you get this nice, that luteinizing hormone kicks back in, testosterone gets produced, and then you start feeling great. You've dropped your estrogen, boosted your test, guys feel fantastic. So the reason that guys use it is just helps restore your chemistry to how it should be, basically. Yeah. And it's very, very important. A lot of guys don't think about estrogen. They think about, I just want testosterone really high. You can have super high testosterone, but if you have high estrogen, it'll bind it all up, and you won't have any actually doing free stuff in your body. So that's sort of how I explain it to guys in a more thorough way than I normally do. But
no, that's perfect, mate. Perfect. And to give an idea of the amount of people who this might have affected, like, obviously estro sold out pretty quick. At a quick glance, at a guess, I guess, how many of those would have been percentage-wise female versus male when it came down to the whole pallet or the whole stock, whatever you had clearing out?
It'd probably be 70-30, even if not 60-40, which is surprising. I thought it'd be like 90-10. I really thought it'd be a female-only product, but I made it very clear from the day that I got the product in that this is for guys and girls, because it's all about ratios. The hormone estrogen is present in men and women, and we need to look at it holistically. But it also is probably a very big handbrake alongside stress for body composition. Like once you if you get someone's hormones back in balance and moderate their estrogen and you start watching their body composition change and their body shape in particular. Like if you get a guy's estrogen back under control, and you start looking at their waist tighten up, their lower back tighten up, they start dropping water. Like I had my guys in the warehouse here, I had everyone start on estro. Like literally every guy in the warehouse started on estro. There was another one of the guys was very much an endomorph like me, young bodybuilder as well. He dropped 4 kilos of water weight in the first week.
Wow. Okay.
Mine was about 2.5, 3 kilos in the first week. I had another guy who was even at about 10% body fat, dropped 3.5 kilos in the first week. I had another guy drop 1 kilo in his first day. He just didn't leave the bathroom the whole day. Like the amount of water weight these guys are flushing, the amount of tightening around the lower stomach, lower back, the real stubborn stuff. And in girls, all around your, if you're competing, your glute hamstring tie-in, lower back as well. Those sort of areas, your glutes as well, if you want those to harden up. These are all areas that are very estrogen sensitive. So with people trying to improve their body composition, get their lower stomach to bugger off, the love handles to go, you drop some water weight, that's what I look at. That's the first place to go. So in guys, it's probably been 30-40%, and they've all had pretty remarkable changes because they weren't expecting what happened. But they're all running primal tests as well as the funny parts. They're all my test booster. I said, stop that for a few weeks, get on estro. They're like, oh, what? Why am I on that? Like, isn't that a chick product? I'm like, just try it and come back. And they've got great mood. They feel fantastic. You can see it. Like they come in and they're on top of the world. They're feeling really good. Their stresses are lowered. Took a lot of stuff in there to help lower stress. And they're just feeling all around great. They're dropping water weight. They're tightening up around the midsection. And they're like, this is awesome. Like they like the guy who dropped the 4 kilos, he hasn't actually gone back on primal test yet. He's just running estro now. So it's interesting, man, when you try it.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So I think that's done a good job, mate, of laying out male and female sides for like estrogen dominance and why we need to address it. Now the big question is, because I, like you, naturally was a fatter kid. I've sort of turned into like a meso endo sort of hybrid. It's still like I can pull the fat off and get in quite good shape, but then after I get to a certain ceiling, body fat goes on pretty easily. I'm still kind of in the middle, so it's quite an interesting product for me. When is it coming back in stock?
Yeah, because mine's running quite low as well. I had the beta sample bottle as well that I was running, luckily, just a big blank tub with no label with 120 caps in it. But it should be, I'm thinking late next week will be the go, which will be sort of first, probably very end of January. But I think for a lot of people, when we look at where we hold body fat, our mood, our fluctuations, and seeing how many, oh man, like if you see it from the quality of life difference, like I had a girl on the phone today to one of my retailers, and she was in tears saying how like it's the first time she's felt normal at that time of the month in years. She normally has migraines, headaches, has to take time off work, like literally has to call in sick. And it's so common that everyone thinks it's normal, but common doesn't mean normal. It just means that everyone's messed up hormonally. So I think girls getting this, they're just like, oh, that, you'll ask them, oh, so how's your period? Oh, yeah, it's just fine. I'm like, oh, okay. So, no headaches, no migraines, no cramping. No, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, I get all that stuff, but that's just normal. That's just that's just what happens. They're like, no, like it should almost sneak up on you is the weird part. So my partner, she's probably one of the very few people who has balanced hormones. It hasn't been on the pill as well long term and is, actually really balanced hormonally. It sneaks up on her. She'll just wake up one morning and go, oh, it's day one now. And and that's how it should be. Our bodies are designed to do this process quite naturally. The massive side effects we're having now that we describe as premenstrual syndrome are all a byproduct of the imbalances. It's like when I see the quality of life that people get back when they start shifting this balance back towards equilibrium, the PMS symptoms disappear. They stop having to take off sick days 3 days a month around the cycle, and all this stuff starts, really, and they're, shifting that stubborn body fat around the midsection, and they're dropping water weight like crazy, and their mood's good, and their stress is down, and they're actually in a positive mood, and they're talking to their partner in a happy voice, and everything's going well. That stuff really gets that really ticks that's my bucket list sort of stuff. Like if I can do that on a broad scale, that's why I made Primabolics. Like if I can do that on to hundreds of people, that's amazing. If I can give them that, and it seems to be doing so with early feedback. So I'm pretty excited.
That's good, man.
It's bloody awesome, man. It's really cool to think. So that's been my big mission statement, is to try and I've got Restore for the adrenals and stress. I've got Primal Test for testosterone, estrogen for estrogen, and I'm slowly building out an arsenal where I can help people therapeutically, like act like a naturopath essentially, like try and help people get everything back in check. Give them the tools to do it, educate them what to look for when they are out of balance, and then let them be in charge of their own bodies. Let them take ownership and go, oh, well, these are some of the things to look for if I'm out of whack. Maybe I should look at this a bit closer right now. Maybe I should put in a campaign to balance this, or maybe I should just be mindful that right now that I'm having some side effects and I've been on the pill for a long time. Let's look into that. That's why I was so excited to get this podcast with you, man, to spread the word, get some people who might not have thought about it, connecting the dots on a few things. And then they might go, oh, that sounds familiar. Maybe I should look at that. Maybe the reason my spare tire hasn't moved in 12 months, despite dieting and exercising like crazy, is what I'm looking into.
Yeah, fair enough, man. Fair enough. And obviously last time, it just came to me now, last time we were talking about the change with the TGA supplement laws. So now that deadline's passed, and I think there's another one in like 2 or 3 years. But so this product is new out, so it's in line with the TGA's current guidelines, right? So it's not something that people are going to love and then get pulled, unless the TGA makes another U-turn, right?
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna make a disclaimer anymore. I'm just gonna say for now it's legal. That's all I can say. But yeah, look, I made a huge push as a brand to go into line with it, and it's a very costly exercise, and I had to reformulate an entire supplement company in 2 weeks, and I had to throw out thousands of dollars worth of labels, and I had to rebuild labels and products and formulas, and
Yeah.
it's been a nightmare few months, but we're lucky in the capsule space that they've given us a good period of grace, and I'm actually considering registering these as therapeutic products because that's what they are. So it'll put them basically in the same category as what you'd buy over the counter at a pharmacy.
Okay.
Because they're potent botanicals. They're very powerful herbs, and they're being used to correct hormonal issues. And people are getting really amazing changes in quality of life, in body composition, in mood. It's really cool to see. So I'm going to do whatever I have to keep this stuff available to the public.
Yeah, perfect. So if people enjoy the product, it's either if the TGA changes something on the ruling, which means it can't be sold as a supplement, you're going to go down the route of actually, no, we're keeping this product so it's helping people. Let's just reclassify it, right? That's powerful that you're willing to do that as a supplement company owner as well.
It costs a bomb too, unfortunately, to do it. Like you've literally got to make a very firm line in the sand because it's, a few grand a year in registration fees, between 5 and 10 grand to actually register it per product per year. And so it becomes a very costly exercise when you've got 3 products to do it on. I've got 11 products in total now as well. So if I wanted to look at it as a brand, it's very expensive exercise. But in this particular space where I'm seeing such drastic results from people, it's giving them a tool to throw it in, correct themselves. It's a very powerful tool to give someone, and I want to keep it out there regardless of what the expense is. So, and I really look forward to some early feedback from people. I love hearing. Like I just get random DMs all the time from people just being, hey man, just tried it. Just want to let you know this stuff changed everything. Like Restore, like, oh wow, I'm sleeping deeply for the first time in years. I'm switching off before bed and I'm not worried all the time. And I'm, that sort of stuff really, it's very, very powerful stuff to keep you motivated to keep doing what you're doing every day.
100%.
So, as you'll see, man, when you start helping, once you see the changes in people, you go, oh wow, like this, I'm helping people in a really big, meaningful way.
Yeah.
It's bloody awesome, man. It's a really cool line of work you and I are in.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think there's a lot of crossovers as well. So I said on the last one that I was going to try grind and restore. And I think now I'm going to have to order, and then the next batch comes in, get some of the estro in and see as a trial run on me. So I can, recommend it to male clients, but also some female clients might be keen to get it in as well. So you probably noticed some of that on my story. I will place the order, guys, if you're listening. I will give you an update. There's going to be more of these episodes where it's not going to be a guest. It's going to be me talking. So maybe something like my experience trying supplements like this, giving my feedback, a little mini case study over 30 days or whatever it is, 60 days, 90 days, whatever. So yeah, look forward to that, guys. But Will, thanks for coming on, man. I don't even know how long we've been on, but I'm cautious that I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think this is a big deep dive that will help people understand the hormones that they've got in their body, whether they're male or female, why it's a good idea to maybe look into supplementation or interventions, whether it's medical or supplements, to get this stuff under control, and how a product like that works, and like how it's even thought about being formulated. And hearing from a supplement company owner as well is massive, so this has been killer, man. It's been a really good episode again, and no doubt that you're a returning guest. There's only been 2 so far. One was recorded yesterday, one is today, so you're in good company now, mate, and it goes to show the quality whenever I'm asking you to come back on. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it, mate. I look forward to doing some more content the same. I'll talk to you in 4 episodes time again for some feedback on estro, hey?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. We'll get you on for a wee guest spot every 4 weeks when I try something.
Oh yeah, mate. It'll just be a regular cycle. We'll just make you and I just sit here and just talk shit about the industry for a few hours and see if anyone listens.
Mate, it's killer. It's killer. Now, mate, if people want to check out Primabolics, they want to check out, because I think you've started your own podcast back up again after a little break, the What's Up podcast. So if they missed the last episode, they didn't follow, or maybe now that they've heard the name Primabolics twice or What's Up podcast, how do people find the podcast? How do people find Primabolics? And how do they find your own personal page as well?
Yeah, definitely, mate. So the What's Up podcast has been a really great project. So that's WOTSUPP. That podcast has been really fun in that, and particularly if any of your listeners are business minded or want to, if any of you are currently, trying to find what you're looking for, a bit of direction, or if you're looking to, start a business, or if you currently run one, if you're a, small business owner, there's a lot of value I try and put into that one by interviewing guests that are very big in the fitness industry, and asking them, just sitting them down and asking raw questions like, how does your, what are some of the hurdles you came up with starting a business? How did you get around those? What are some of the hardest low light moments of business? How did you get through it? And then also tying in the supplement space, putting it all under a bit of an umbrella of fitness. So the What's Up podcast is a really good one, particularly if you're, business minded, want to start your own, and if you're interested in the fitness industry, and sort of hearing some of the bigger people in it talk. And then I guess for Primabolics, we're on all the usual platforms. Instagram is where we're most active, and same with myself as well. So Will_Primer is mine, and then just Primabolics is the Insta for the business one. But if anyone in particular has any hormonal questions, they don't want to message the business page on, because that has a few admins with my staff. But if someone wants some actual personal information, wants to reach out and connect and sort of have a chat about the hormonal side of things, Will_Primer, Prima, is where they can find me. I'm always happy to connect with like-minded people. So
yeah, awesome, man, awesome. Well, thank you for your time, mate, and I hope guys go and follow you because they're good products or everything else. I'll be doing my own little trial whenever Estro comes back in stock. And yeah, we'll go from there, mate. But thanks for your time today. Guys, please follow him. Please screenshot if you've enjoyed this. Tag both of us. Let us know what you liked about it, whether you want more of this sort of stuff with supplements. The only way to know if you're enjoying this is if you actually tag us and let us know, or message us saying, oh, this was a goodie. So please encourage you to do that. Please follow Will if you're interested in his stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Will, thanks for your time, mate, and speak soon.
Pleasure, mate. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to The O Show with your host, Oren McCory. If you liked this episode, then please subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening and share this on your social media. We'll see you on the next episode for more no-nonsense advice to help you supercharge your efforts in the gym, in the kitchen, and most importantly, in your head. See you then.